Neville Goddard. Who is he and why are so many people obsessed with him? And what exactly is the law of assumption? So many people are talking about it. I get asked about it all the time. In this video, we're going to talk about who Neville Goddard is, why everyone is obsessed with him, and how law of assumption differs from the law of attraction. Welcome. If you have a question for me, go ahead and comment down below because your questions inspire my videos. Okay, let's start with the basics. Who is Neville Goddard? Well, Neville Goddard was a 20th century mystic author who wrote extensively on the power of the mind to shape reality. He was born in Barbados in 1905 and died in 1972 in the United States, where he had lived and been living. Those who knew him described him as an amazing teacher and lecturer, and that he had a very commanding presence when he would walk into a room. Everyone would look up to see who had just walked in because he just exuded this energy. He has been credited with popularizing the law of assumption and the idea that our thoughts and imagination can create our reality. However, I disagree with that statement because he did not actually come up with the law of assumption. But more on that later. So now that we know who Neville Goddard was, why are so many people obsessed with him? I think there are a few reasons for this. First, Neville Goddard was a very charismatic and influential teacher, and his teachings have resonated with many people around the world. Secondly, his books are easy to read and understand, which makes them accessible to a wide audience. And thirdly, his teachings have been popularized through social media, especially TikTok, which has led to a surge in interest in his work. I started getting questions about the law of assumption long before I ever created my own channel in that because back then I was on TikTok and I used to answer these questions over there. Now I do know if you've seen the type of comments that I get, but they usually something along the lines of, well, I saw this on TikTok and so I had to look further, or I heard about this and I wanted to know more, or I've been studying this and this and this and I haven't gotten any results yet. So basically people are using his teachings as a quick fix, and they think that if they follow his teachings that their lives are going to change overnight, and they and have to work hard anymore. Alright, now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video, shall we? What is the law of assumption? The law of assumption is a metaphysical principle that states that our thoughts and beliefs create our reality. It is the idea that we can manifest our desires by assuming that they have already been fulfilled. Now this is where I disagree with Neville Goddard, because according to him, the law of assumption is his own personal interpretation of what he called the law of vibration. This is where he came up with the saying, "Assume your desire and it will be granted." However, this principle is not a new concept. In fact, it has been around for centuries under different names such as the law of attraction, the Kybalion, or the Hermetic principle. Additionally, there are similarities between the law of assumption and other metaphysical principles, such as the teachings of Buddha and Jesus Christ. Now let's compare the law of assumption to the law of attraction. They sound similar, right? So what's the difference? Well, the law of attraction is the idea that like attracts like. That means that positive thoughts attract positive experiences, while negative thoughts attract negative experiences. This is also known as the Kybalion, which is one of the ancient Hermetic principles. On the other hand, the law of assumption is the idea that we can manifest our desires by assuming that they have already been fulfilled. This means that we can attract our desires into our lives by thinking and acting as if they have already happened. Now let's compare both of these laws side by side. So the law of attraction says like attracts like. So if we want to attract good things into our lives, we need to think positively. If we constantly think negatively, we will only attract bad things to us. Think about a magnet, right? Opposite poles attract each other. So if you had two north poles facing each other, they would repel each other. That's kind of how the law of attraction works. The law of assumption, on the other hand, says that we can assume our desire and it will be granted. So if we want to attract something into our lives, we need to act as if it has already happened. We need to believe that it has already happened, and we need to feel as if it has already happened. We essentially become what we think about. This is similar to the Bible verse that says, "Whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you will have them." This verse tells us that we need to have faith in our desires and believe that they are already ours. We need to trust that the universe will bring them to us. There are some key differences between these two laws, though. The law of attraction focuses on the power of thought, and the law of assumption focuses on the power of belief and action. The law of attraction says that we attract what we think about, while the law of assumption says that we attract what we assume to be true. Another difference is that the law of attraction is more passive, while the law of assumption is more active. The law of attraction teaches us to sit back and relax and let the universe bring us what we want. The law of assumption teaches us to take action towards our goals and dreams. The law of assumption is more goal-oriented than the law of attraction is, because it requires us to take action in order to manifest our desires. Let's talk about some of the benefits of using the law of assumption. First, it helps us to focus on what we want rather than what we don't want. When we use the law of attraction, we tend to focus on what we do and want, and this actually attracts more of it to us. For example, let's say you don't want to be late for work. If you keep thinking about being late for work, then guess what? You're going to be late for work because that's what you're focusing on. Instead, you should use the law of assumption and assume that you're never late for work. You should assume that you always arrive on time and that you never have any problems getting to work on time. By assuming that you're never late for work, you resetting yourself up for success, and you re-increasing the likelihood that you actually make it to work on time. Another benefit of the law of assumption is that it helps us to take control of our lives. When we assume that we are in control of our lives, we send out a powerful message to the universe, and this allows us to manifest the life that we want. Let's say, for example, that you want to start a business. If you assume that you are in control of your business, that you are the one who decides whether or not your business is successful, then you are more likely to succeed. This is because your attitude determines your altitude, right? If you think that you're a victim of circumstances, then you're going to be one. But if you assume that you're in control of your life, then you're much more likely to create the life that you want. And another thing is that the law of assumption is extremely simple to use. All we have to do is assume that our desire is already true, and then act as if it already is. For example, if we want to manifest a new job, we can assume that we already have the job and then start acting like we do. We can start dressing like we're going to work every day, even though we don't have a job to go to. We can start waking up early and taking the bus to work, even though we don't have a job. We can start packing lunches and doing all the things that we would do if we already had a job. By doing this, we are manifesting the new job that we want. The law of assumption is a powerful tool that can be used to manifest anything that we want in life. It is a simple yet effective technique that can help us to focus on what we want, take control of our lives, and manifest our deepest desires. Remember, if Neville Goddard could manifest his desires using this law, so can you. His teachings can serve as a guiding light in your journey towards manifesting your own reality. Thank you for watching.